Hey, good evening, and welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel Club of the month and our monthly show. This is February 2023. We've got a really fun book. It's Too Dead to Die, a Simon Cross thriller. I was going to say mystery, but it's a thriller. And we're really lucky here to have our guests. We've got MARC Guggenheim and Howard CHAYKIN. Hello, gentlemen.
Well, hi, Brian. Hi, Mark. I didn't realize you were here.
Of course. Yes. No, well, it's a surprise for me, too. Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to come in. My first question's always the same. I really like this question. And it's why comics? Of all the things you could be doing, why do you do comics? And I want to start with you, Mark, and I want to especially add it to the comics cannot be a thing that make you that much of a living in and of themselves compared to your film and television work.
No, in fact, it's funny today. A new comic book project got announced, and a new comic book of mine came out. And my agent was like, "What's the time commitment on these projects?" And I'm like, "Well, it's amazing that it's taken you this long to ask." But the truth of the matter is that, like most people, like everyone in comic books, really, you do it for the love of the game. I've always loved comics. Like, it sounds cliche or maudlin, but the truth of the matter is that one of my earliest memories was sitting on the floor of my bedroom flipping through a Superman comic book. This was before I could even read. I don't even remember where I got the comic book from. But for my entire life, for as long as I can remember, I've loved these things. So the ability to get a chance to write them is a privilege that I never thought I would ever dream of.
That's cool. That's a great way to feel about it too. I love that.
Yeah. No, it's nothing but it's just nothing but joy. And I will say, over the years, because I've been writing comic books for 17 years now, over the years, I've also come to enjoy the craft of it, the puzzle solving, the number of panels page, the 3 breaks on a page turn, the mathematics of it. I've come to really, really enjoy, as opposed to just being in it as a fanboy.
I understand. Howard, how about you? Same question. I have a feeling you have a somewhat more cynical take. Am I?
Not at all. Not at all. I learned to read. I taught myself. I discovered comics at 4, and at the age of 5, I was reading on a 4th grade level because of comics. I have wanted to do nothing else with my life since the moment I discovered comics. It was the absolute be-all, end-all of my experience. And one of the things I've come to understand over the past decade or so is that my interest in comics has flagged dramatically as a consumer because comics are a bastardized form of the newspaper comic strip, and they were both kicked to the curb by the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants who ran that particular franchise, because comics were an ethnic, mostly Jewish, occasionally Italian, a few Poles, and some Latins. But the thing that makes comics, that gives comics its exceptionalness, is the very thing that's being lost in all the transliteration of comics content into movies and television, which is the page. The very existence of a single page, with the page that precedes it and one that follows it, is what makes comics special. That it is a single unit of narrative, and that the page represents time and space representing time. And that, Mark talked about the mathematics of it. One of the reasons I like working with Mark is that he does acknowledge that it is mathematics. Many writers don't. And whereas his mathematics different from mine as much as Bach does from Beethoven's, we're both geometrists. And the making of a comic book page gives me the same pleasure that I once received from reading a comic book. The solution of the narrative solution, finding the creation of pictures with narrative value, is the center of my universe. That's what it's all about. So that's why comics. I'm a comic book man. There's just no way around it. And I love the form. I love the narrative form. I love the capacity for context, but not the content.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the content is a big issue. And I see it all. I see it happening all around me, that the readership is getting very confused by what the big companies are doing these days. And it's a strange thing. I'm really interested, Howard, because back in the 70s, you did a number of adaptations of books and working with authors to do original graphic novels that really seemed to me should have been like the next evolution to not have to necessarily toil in the plantation fields in Marvel and DC. And it never seemed to go anywhere particularly.
Is there a question there, or
well, I mean, yeah, there is a question. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that didn't
because the audience is infantilized. The audience was infantilized by the advent of the Comics Code Authority around the same time that I discovered comics, and that the audience for mainstream material remained the audience that remained to consume what was left in comics after the self-inflicted gunshot wound of the Comics Code Authority were perfectly happy with superhero funny annals and teenage stories and love comics. And they drove away love comics out of the business because they didn't like women particularly much. And it's true. My generation is responsible for the collapse of the romance industry, to my great despair. And I'm quite serious. I mean, Larry Hama and I talk about this frequently, that reality. And so what's left is a group of men getting older and older, with a couple of women, but mostly men, who are perfectly happy with content that is simply dirtier than dirtied up versions of the crap they read when they were 12.
Right.
And using and again, going right back to that, the content is what is king in the comic book business. The mainstream companies, Marvel and DC, have convinced the audience that the characters are the brand, that Batman is the brand, as opposed to who's doing it.
Yeah.
The talent is the brand. You know, I mean, Guggenheim's take on Wolverine, which I did 6 issues of with him, is entirely different from Jason Aaron's. And what I found fascinating was that I was hired to do that Guggenheim job, and then I was unhired from it. Someone else was hired to do it. He delivered 20 pages, and they hated those pages. They threw him away, and he's a good guy. He's a good talent. I don't know what they hated about them. They struck me as perfectly conventional in their time and place. But I was brought in, and I had the best time. I love working with Guggenheim. I should explain. He's one of two guys I would always work with again. The other one, Mark Wade. Okay. Because they again,
and the feeling is totally mutual, by the way.
What's that? Guggenheim does know the man. He knows math.
The feeling is totally mutual.
I know. We are a mutual admiration society.
That's great. The audience seems like it's changing though now. I mean, when you look at BookScan, a much wider variety of material is selling. Do you think it's time to start doing more things in those kind of serious veins?
No.
Okay.
Mark, what do you think?
I don't know what's selling. I mean, I'm so ignorant. I don't go on BookScan. So, if you're talking about Ed Brubaker's, graphic novels, I'm like, oh, those are really cool. I dig those. I would love to sort of, play around with that genre, but not because, that's what's selling. Because like I said, I don't know what really is selling. What's selling now?
Well, I mean, all kinds of things are selling in a store that stocks them, I don't want to turn this into retail sales call, but there is clearly a wider audience for adult material now that's thoughtful and is intelligent, and at the other side of the end of things, the children's material is now not infantile superheroes anymore. What the kids don't want that. Kids don't want superheroes at all. Kids want slice of life stories. Kids want Raina Telgemeier that's a diary comic. It's, you know, I don't know. It's amazing to me how the market's changing, and it's amazing to me how locked in certain segments of the market are to the old model when the old model doesn't seem like it's working any longer.
Yeah, I think, you know, by the way, every industry, every medium changes over time. And, you know, there's always two types of people or two types of companies when that happens. The people who are holding on to the old way of doing something and the people who are embracing the new way. And eventually the former, you know, sort of peters out or goes out of business and they're replaced by the latter, and the cycle continues.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Well,
I'm hampered by the fact that my work looks like mainstream comics, but what I write about has very little to do with the context and themes of mainstream comics.
Right.
I mean, when I work with Mark and I play in a genre, and we work with that genre, you know, successfully. You know, but you know, my stuff, I do, you know, dirty stuff, historical stuff, you know, just, you know, and I don't subscribe to the hero villain model in any way. The protagonist and antagonist of my material are frequently interchangeable. Mm-hmm. That makes comic book readers very uncomfortable because they have a very, very punchboard and bullet pointed way of thinking about this material. I'm not talking about the guys, about people who read this sort of stuff you're talking about, Brian. I'm talking about the mainstream comic book audience in which I function and work. You know, I mean, I had a conversation with the guy that I consider the single best cover artist working in comics today. Be the guy who did the cover of this book, I might add. You know, who was pissing and moaning. And I said, you know, it's because you're working in an audience that doesn't have any fucking idea what you're doing. They respond to sentimentality and cute shit. They don't recognize graphics. Their sensibilities are not sophisticated. If George Lois were alive today, he'd be laughing at, you know, just pissing all over them. I mean, you know, when I talk to people about graphic design in comics, because comics is graphic design in the service of narrative to extend what Mark was talking about. These people have no clue, you know. Most comic book writers and many comic book artists regard everything other than what they do as simply, you know, like lettering is simply a delivery system for narrative, and color is a way to separate the front from the back. Mm. Everything in comics is in the service of narrative. Everything, including the editor's job and the reader's job. The reader is the engine that turns the page. Yeah. And the engagement with the reader is an absolute imperative. But most people engage with the reader by selling them the shit-ass fantasies that have kept them excited since they were 11. That's not my idea of engagement. Again, I know how to make friends and influence people. Wherever.
Yeah, no. I mean, the thing is I can't disagree with the word that you're saying there. You know, I just I think that stores that try to do something better and something more are able to succeed doing it. There is a wide audience out there who is receptive to the form of comics, and you know, it wants to be challenged. Not all the time, not with every project. You know, everybody likes a little pablum. You know, but you know, I think there's definitely a lot of room out there for strong narrative. You know, we try to prove that every day here at the store. But again, that I don't want it to be the let me tell you about retail show. Let's ask about this book itself, the Too Dead to Die. Where did the idea for this come from?
I guess I'll take that one. You know, this is just an idea that I've had for, quite frankly, I forget how I really got it. Is the way I'd like to describe it is this is you know, as many years. And what happened was the pandemic hit, television and TV production shut down. I suddenly found myself with a lot of time, and that time coincided with this sort of New Year's resolution I had made in 2020 to do more creator-owned comics. So, you know, production shuts down, and I just kept writing. And one of the first things I wrote was what became Too Dead to Die. And there you go.
Did you plan it out with the idea that Howard would be drawing it, but maybe we lost your connection? Looks like it just went away. Do you know Howard? Did he come to you with this idea ahead of time, or did he give it to you?
I out of the blue. I was delighted to get it. I mean, it's again, I had made a pledge that I wouldn't work with another writer again, and then Mark came along, and of course, I fell over myself and did it. It's the reality is, I wasn't looking for work. But I like the idea. It was a fun Oh, you're back.
There he is.
All right, answer that question. Did you hear the question that Brian asked?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was just before you dropped. Just before you dropped, I asked if you had written it with Howard in mind to do it, or if you were just writing it on spec.
That's the best part. That's the best part. So I started out writing it on spec, and And let me explain a little bit about my process because it's relevant to the question. When I write, I have an outline and stuff, but the outline is really like notes to myself. And I write full script, and I sort of tell the story the way I tell a story in a teleplay or a screenplay. It's like, okay, here's the first scene, here's the second scene, and like I do with a screenplay or a teleplay, I'm picturing the story playing out. It just so happens it's playing out in comic book form in my head. And about 10 or so pages in, I started to realize, the images that I'm seeing in my mind's eye are Howard's art. So I didn't intend to write it for Howard. I was just writing it really for me until I realized, I'm actually writing it for Howard. So I finished I think about 20 something pages and reached a good point where I was like, okay, well, I should probably share this with Howard and see if he's even interested. He was very kind. First of all, I didn't just send him the script. I said, hey, would you be interested in reading something? And he was very kind and said, yes, he would. And he read the script and he said he was in. And I think that was actually, Howard, your words in the email, I'm in. And it was we were off to the races.
Nice. Is that how you remember it as well, Howard?
Pretty much. I mean, yeah. I mean, the fact, as I said while you were away, I mean, I made a pledge that I wasn't going to work with another writer again. And then you came along and I'm working with another writer. It was, the material felt right, and it was an opportunity to do something that I hadn't done before. I mean, a modern, contemporary Los Angeles and world, which I like doing, action that isn't, particularly hyperbolic, that is, the character was only a couple of years younger than me. I think Mark was a little freaked out when the character first showed up in the book, then he was bearded. And with my every intention was to remove the beard because I felt that one of the aspects of the material, we're not giving anything away, this is no spoiler, is this is a guy who is beaten up by life and has literally trying really hard to keep his body up in check, but his depression is eating away in his own body. And the beard was a perfect reflection of that. And shaving the beard and watching the character evolve from a rather dour, frankly narcissistic, staring into the mirror about to punch it in the face, to a guy who seemed to be having a really good time, doing that classic fuck around and find out and delighting by what he was finding, seemed to be the franchise that the book called for.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love so much about working with Howard, because he's not just an artist. He's the right kind of artist, because the right kind of artist in comic books is an artist who is also a storyteller. Like, the best comic books are the ones where the writer and the artist are both engaged in the process of narrative, are both doing the same job, which is to tell a story. And and it wasn't that I was shocked that I saw the beard. It was more like, that's a really good idea. In fact, One of the things I've been working on lately is we sold the rights to Do Dead to Die to a major studio I'm not allowed to name, with a production company I'm not allowed to name, with an actor I'm not allowed to name. But in the movie, I actually made a much big deal of Cross's transformation from bearded, crusty old guy to someone who is trying to get back to the type of person he used to be. Like that. That's now like a full-on sequence in the movie, and that would not have existed if not for Howard's great observations.
I'm sorry, Brian.
Go ahead, Howard.
No. I was just going to jabber, as you always accuse me of.
I like you jabbering though, so that's fine. And now I've completely lost what I was going to say.
The system's working.
I was going to ask something about does it, when you know who the artist is, when you know that Howard's drawing it, does it change the way that you write versus you're picturing it as though Howard drew it? Is there a difference between those two states, I guess, is the question.
Yes. The short answer is yes. The longer answer, which is a bit more complicated, is that I start to write towards what I know, whether it's Howard or anyone else, what I know they're good at, or I know that it's funny. I'm working with an artist now, and I've never worked with him before, and I'm starting to realize, he benefits from fewer panels per page. Like, just the way he composes his shots in each individual panel is more conducive to a 4-panel page, whereas I tend to favor a 5-panel page. So I'm like, okay, I'm making that adjustment. Like, with Howard, like, I know, it's almost cliche now to talk about like the things that Howard is really great at, women and action and, guys in good suits and stuff. But, it's helpful to just know, like, this is the stuff in the artist's repertoire. And I think, the way I would write to a particular actor, I try to write to a particular artist.
Sure.
That may be so, but when DC was still in New York, I was in town for theater, and I spent the day with Joey Cavalieri, who's one of my favorite people in the world. And there was a couple of pages of a story up on the wall. I said, Guggenheim. And I recognized it as a MARC script by the breakdown of the panels.
This is a great story. I didn't know the story. This is great.
It's true. I think I've told you this. I think I mentioned this to you. Because the guy, it was lousy. I mean, really, because I know how MARC calls out for reference. I know how MARC calls out for location. And I know MARC provides this. I think there are other people who might resent it. I fucking love it.
Thanks,
because it means that I can either have something I can work with or something that I can work against. And those two things are really what maintain the interest. And when MARC scripts are peppered with pictures. When you watch TCM and you see that fast track when they do the short in TCM original content at the end of a movie that's a little bit more time, and they show that the art director's notebook and the costume designer's notebook, MARC scripts are a lot like that, and I really dig that. And there are artists who really hate that shit. It's true.
Yeah. Oh no. I
on this, but I'll let you know later.
Yeah. Let me know. Also, let me know if I've worked with them.
Not comics guys, oddly enough, but it's a really good thing to have. And it's because it tells me that MARC is still thinking visually. See, that's what separates MARC from a lot of guys. MARC, I don't feel, even if I adjust MARC's imposed layout on a page, I'm telling the story he wants to tell, because it makes sense in the amount of space that it's allotted to me. Yeah. I've never felt the need to MARC stuff, which I frequently have to do with other writers, which is to translate a literary idea into a visual motif. That is already a visual motif. That is a gift to me.
Well, okay. It's funny. I always say to other writers, or particularly younger writers, that writing any medium, I feel, is an act of empathy, because you are writing for someone other than yourself. Because if you're writing only for yourself, that's a grocery list. When you're writing for an audience, you have to be empathizing with your reader. Writing a comic book script is, to me, the ultimate act of empathy in writing form, because you're asking the reader of the script, the artist, to actually execute your ideas. Don't be an asshole. Like, don't ask for something that's physically impossible to draw. Like, you don't have to be an artist, I think, to be empathetic and place yourself in the artist's shoes and say, could this possibly be drawn by a human being? Because that's what ultimately has to happen. And I'm always just sort of shocked that's not more commonplace, because to me that's the bare minimum. The bare minimum is writing something that someone else can draw.
So when you start writing your script, when you've got you turn your laptop on, the blinking cursor's there on a blank white field, how do you then do that? How do you then lay that page out in your head? Do you do your own thumbnails so you can see how it works? Or is it just that you've been doing it long enough that you know what you can ask for and what you can't?
Like, I used to do thumbnails. I've been writing comic books for like 17 years now. So, and a lot of it is, sort of internalized. Believe it or not, what I will do, okay, this is terrible. I shouldn't be sharing these secrets with you, but basically what I do is, like, if I'm beginning, let's say for the sake of argument, I'm beginning with a dialogue scene, I'll just write the dialogue out first. And, and if I have like an idea, like, I'll like be like, oh, that's where a panel break will go, or like, that's an angle that I want, or whatever. If it's an action sequence, I start with the action first, just describing, the panels, shot, 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 shot. And then, and this is where I think the fun is for me, then it's like, I take that scene and I break it down into a series of pages. And it's kind of like fun to see, like, oh, wait a second, like that page turn happens again around panel 5, which is always what I'm chasing. And it happens. Oh, there's a, if I always like, if it's dialogue, there's a question mark, at the end of the last line of dialogue. So like, ooh, it's someone asked a question, turn the page, get an answer. An action thing, type of scene, some sort of critical, moment in the action. There, I'm also like trying to build towards like big visual things, and that sort of speaks to like the third type of scene in comics, which for me is sort of like, I call it the reveal scene. It's like I just did this other graphic novel that sort of starts with someone, basically a news helicopter flying across New York City, and like on a page turn is supposed to be this double page spread of this sci-fi phenomenon that's going to be the basis of the book. So like you've got your action scene, your character scenes, and your reveal scenes. And again, there's different math that goes into each of those, but I just sort of start by, if it's action or reveal, I'm just listing shots, really. And if it's dialogue, I'm writing the dialogue and then breaking it up.
Mm-hmm. That makes a certain amount of sense to me. It seems to me, though, that it must be a very different kind of writing than you do when you're doing television, right? Because there's not discrete pages in television, right? Even though you have a scene, it's not the same way of breaking it down, is it? No, you're absolutely right, and it shouldn't be the same. Like, a comic book is not a static version of a TV show or movie, or at least it shouldn't be. You're not taking advantage of the media way. And similarly, like, the way I write a TV script is very different from how I write a feature film script. So they're very different muscles. Is there some Venn diagram overlap between the three? Of course, it's storytelling. Storytelling is storytelling. But using
the means of each individual medium to tell that story, that's what's different. And I always, I try, don't always succeed, but I try to really sort of tell the story in a way that enhances the medium I am working in.
Sure. And Howard, when you get that script and you've got your blank page in front of you, and let me just ask, actually, I'm sure I know the answer to this, but you work physically, right? You don't work digitally.
Right. Well, I mix both. I mean, I work both.
But
I mean,
your initial thing is it.
I still have a callus. Yes, I still have a finger callus.
Yeah,
a brush callus. And it's well, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was answering your question before it was asked.
Right. Well, so then the question is so you get the script. What's your next step? Do you read the whole thing a couple of times? Do you just read it once and then start trying to draw the layouts? How close are you following?
When I'm reading the script, I have a pencil in my hand, and my first impulse is always to put a postage stamp alongside a page if I see an idea that feels like there's a potential pattern available. My layouts start as 2x3 thumbnails on a Xerox sheet. I have a row of 5 making 10. So an issue is 3, 2.5, 3 of those. And for me, it's about setting up a pattern. Because I need to know what the returns are, what page faces what, paginating, where my beats are, what the money shot on each page is. Gil was the guy who really had a strong belief in the existence of money shots, and I do as well. And I like the idea of building a page around a larger image. Mark was talking about 5 panels, 4 panels. 5 panels is my number, but it's not 5 equal size panels. But I also believe that if you've got panels that are approximately the same size as the others should be exactly the same size as the others. You tell your reader something subliminally when you're casual about the size of your panel. If I've got a tier of 3 panels crossing, they're all going to be exactly the same size, unless the reason for their being different in size is part of the narrative itself. And that's just a bit of obsessive formalism. Indulge me in that. It's one of the reasons why when I get a script, I mean, from Mark as well, there'll be adjustments. If he'll ask for 5 panels, he'll get 6, because I'll feel that I'll need something here. One of the most frustrating experiences I've ever had was when I was working at Marvel. I would frequently have, and I don't deliver pencils, I deliver finishes, because if you're going to hire me, you know what you're going to get. I mean, I'm not here to be edited by some clown. And I would be edited by some clown who would ask me to remove I'd add a panel. And because basically you needed the beat, and I was asked to remove it. And I felt that, you don't know your fucking job. Why are you telling me to do mine? So I'm glad she's not working at Marvel anymore.
I will say that, every first script, script with a new artist that I work with has this, this little, now it's boilerplate at the top, which is that the script it's not a script in my mind so much as this is the current brain dump of the story and how I'm seeing it. And that's why there's art reference and that, and if I have an idea for a particular camera angle, I'll call it out. But bottom line, I want the artist to tell the story in the best way they know how. Because the thing I always say is much rather that readers get to read the great version of what's in the artist's head than the mediocre version of what's in mine. So if the story is better told in extra, great. If the story is better told in fewer panels, equally great. Like, I'll make adjustments at the lettering stage all day long.
Yeah, to Ken Brusenak's constant dismay.
What happened, Brian? What'd I do?
Brusenak.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, come on, it's okay.
That's
making Ken Brusenak's blood boil has kept me young and green for 50 years. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I know I'm not probably his favorite person. That is
I'm
probably
sure
true.
Look, I believe there are weeks that go by where he's underthrilled by me. I mean, it's okay. One of the things about Ken is that he is the best in the business. What he does better than anyone else. I mean, when you look at Hey Kids, when you look at Divided States, the signage, the graphics, everything about it just absolutely kicks serious ass. And he brings an A game to everywhere he goes.
Can I ask you a question? Actually, Brian, can I do this? Can I take your job for a second?
By all means.
You mentioned Hey Kids, and we were talking about page layouts. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like for Hey Kids, you designed a very specific page layout format that you're not using in every single page, but it definitely is a motif that runs throughout the entire series.
Yes.
I just want to know, as a fan, like, how'd you come up with that? Why'd you come up with that? Like, when do you decide to use it? That type of thing.
Because so much of the book, to a great extent, is wham, wham, wham. That moment where there's an undercutting of a point of reference, that it calls for it. And I didn't realize this until I did the cold open sequence in Volume 1, Number 1, when I had the Meyer Hershen's trophy wife reacts to Meyer Hershen's remark about the guy who just gave $20 to a panhandler, that he's the guy who created this thing we're going in to see right now. And that momentary self-awareness on the part of the trophy wife, that was the cue for me to understand that so much of what the book was about that are you serious look that comes out of people when they deal with comic books. And I'm 53 years into the field. That doesn't account my time as an apprentice. And the thing about comics is that everybody and most comic fans want to believe the lie that we're all a bunch of comic book loving guys. And the truth is, it's a job, and it's a job I'm grateful to have. I don't want anything else to do, but the truth is, it is getting up every morning and having to look at this stuff and to deal with the issues and the problems. And I love the idea. Look, full well I'm a serious musical comedy guy, and so much of what I'm doing in Hey Kids is a reflection of my love of musical theater, because it's all about this. Could easily be a musical.
Interesting. Because you know that Ken's going to be doing your lettering, is there anything about your art that changes? Like in terms of the big special effects, the onomatopoeia, the choom, choom, choom of a helicopter. Do you draw that in? Do you leave space for it? How does it work physically?
I learned a long time ago to leave him alone, because I'll get back from him better than I could ever tell him to do. I mean, anecdotally, on the Divided States, when I did Divided States, there was a phrase that was excellent in the current vocabulary: internet chatter. And when I gave him, I said, I need to see some reflection of internet chatter. What I was expecting was kind of a button along the lines of what we did on the Go Gang alarm and flag. What I got instead was a page-encompassing set of gibberish graphics that made the pages look very nervous and very upset with themselves. And it enhanced the experience of the material. And again, it's the sort of thing that only works in a medium like comic books. where that page exists as a unit of space representing time.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it also means
he's doing all the fake covers that are peppered throughout Hey Kids. He's got the artwork, but what he does is he's doing the trade dress. He's doing the color on that stuff.
Yeah.
And because he like me goes back to comics fandom from we were both old school fans. I mean, I collected Golden Age comics when I was 10 and 12. Because in those days you could get a run of detectives for $2.50 a piece.
Sure.
Okay. So he knows that stuff backwards and forwards. Why interfere?
Yeah. How much of your time, Howard, is split between getting the thumbnails right versus the actual on the page rendering?
I'll show you a page. You want to see a page in pencil form right now?
Oh, 100%.
Sure. Stay right there. I'll be right back.
We can do that. We can stay right here. That's easy enough. But we got to fill the space with something, Mark. So
okay, hit me.
Oh well,
there you go.
He came back.
Right? This is I can already tell this is from Hey Kids because it's got the panel layout.
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
This is a page from Hey Kids, Volume 3, Issue 3.
Yeah.
And what's on the page is the 3 insets. What you've got on the top up here, the top panel is a crate of comics. The second panel is a fixed POV of the same shot.
Yeah.
As 2 kids dump the smaller one into the box. And the bottom panel is a down shot where the panel border itself, thanks to Brusinak's finish, is now the shape and frame of that crate. And the kid is lying on a bed of comic books. Okay. But that's what it's in. And this is what is delivered to Ken. Ken is doing the production on the material as well now. He's doing the digital assemblage. So he's got the crate. He's got the house it's sitting in front of. And all the comics that he's got are all the comic books that we've been making since volume 1, issue 1. That's how that's done.
Yeah, no, but so my question was actually more. It was more broad. It wasn't about specifically working with Ken. It was in terms of sort of your a split of labor, because every artist has given me kind of a different answer on this. Do you put more time, more thought, more energy into that layout stuff versus the actual rendering, or is it the other way around, or is it roughly even?
I can do layouts with my ass in my sleep.
Okay.
I mean, it's just
sure.
It's the one skill set that I have that is something that I can do automatically. I have an innate understanding of how the page breaks out. Rendering is an issue. I'm not a natural draftsman. I have to struggle and study. And there's a great title of Earl Oliver Hearst's the article about Earl Oliver Hearst in Step by Step magazine by Fred Tarabari. Earl Oliver Hearst and the Illusion of Spontaneity. My work has a roughness that is not in any way the result of spontaneity. It's a result of hard, laborious work. So that's the deal.
Okay. Yeah, because I've certainly had people tell me that all the fun that they get is in the layout, and other people all the fun that they get is in the rendering. It's just always interesting to me how it breaks down for different people.
If they stop thinking of it in terms of fun and remember that it was work, perhaps they would make headlines. I'm just saying. I'm just a thought. It's part of one of the tenets of. As I told you, I had lunch with Casada and Jim McLaughlin today, and one of the tenets that the first day of that seminar consisted of beating the hobbyism out of talent. It is not a hobby; it is a profession. It is a calling, and if you're waiting for your muse to show up, take a bus. It's just. Please, you get up in the morning, you sit down and you do it. You solve the job, you solve the problem. It's what you're expected to do. And if you don't want to do it, sell shoes.
How many? What's you page a day? Faster?
Doesn't work out like that. I do 20 to 25 pages a month.
Okay. No page.
That's about what we averaged out, wasn't it, Mark?
Yeah, and that feels exactly right. Yeah, because also bear in mind, like you're very rare in that regard. There's not a lot of artists these days who will or can work that fast. That's
because they're dilettantes and hobbyists.
Well, I think also because they're not. It's funny because it used to be especially the major two companies, you had to hit a monthly schedule. The idea of missing shipping was simply that's why inventory stories existed. The idea of missing shipping was an anathema. It was simply not done. And now missing shipping is totally on the table. And I think that sort of, it's not keeping anyone, artist, writer, colorist, whatever, honest.
It's even worse. Actually, I will say as a retailer, it's even worse because it seems to me like the calculation has flopped at the publisher level, where there's no longer a deadline until final order cutoff night, and even then, there's still not a deadline for if you're an A-list cover artist.
Right.
I cannot tell you how many comics that I'm being asked to order. Cover by artist X, and then we can't see what that cover is when we have to order it. And Marvel and DC don't seem to care about that, and it's the weirdest change to me in the professionalism of mainstream publishing, is that they've become less and less and less professional as the years go on. I suspect because they have more competition in a way.
Actually, it's funny. I'm here to tell you, I was having this conversation with my wife, who's also a writer and who works in television, the other night. Let me put it this way. I don't think it's limited, Brian, to publishing. There seems to be a lack of, I wouldn't say professionalism, but even in television these days, and especially in television these days, the idea of actually hitting deadlines it's gone away. It's funny. I turned in a movie to a major producer over the quarantine, and she I sent it by email, and she emailed back "Oh my God, that was fast," and I'm like, "This is the 12th week of the 12th week, of a 12-week contract." It's actually, for me, it's pretty slow. I rarely take all 12 weeks for this. 12 weeks is standard for a feature. I rarely take all 12 weeks, but I realized, she's used to dealing with writers who actually don't work primarily in television, where deadlines, used to matter. The idea of, that deadline was a suggestion. It's not a real deadline. And most writers that she's clearly working with never hit the deadlines. It's mystifying to me.
Well, anecdotally, when the economic collapse happened in the late early aughts, I was driving to Phoenix with an assistant of mine for a show, and we were talking about the economic collapse, and he had no idea what I was talking about. He was completely out of the loop, musically. He had no clue. Yeah, and I get a call as we're halfway. By the time I got halfway to Phoenix in the car, I get a call from my editor at Marvel. Now, when I was working at Marvel, I delivered everything early. My stuff got in early because I wanted to buy as much time as possible for the colorist. There are colorists who took advantage of that, who are dead to me and will never get a recommendation. And there are others who will always get wrecked. Okay. I'm working with a guy who's a legacy of one of those guys now. And it was Friday. And I said, he said, where are you at on the job? I said, I'm good. I'm going to be delivering pages a week today. You'll get the first half of the book a week today, which is still at least a week before they're due. And I said, but of course, if you want, when I get home on Monday, I can start feeding you a couple of pages, assuming he'd say, no, Friday's fine. He said, Monday be great. I said, okay, no problem. I'll do this. Hang up the phone. And I turned to my assistant. I said, you just had a lesson as how the economic crunch is hitting Marvel Comics, in comics in general, because what just happened there was me delivering pages to him on Monday so they can slip in them as flats at a printer so they avoid printing penalties.
Sure.
Someone else is not going to deliver that they need that to fill that space, which is one of the reasons why my stuff will occasionally come out looking inconsistent in terms of color and reproduction. because they're using this 2 or 3 page, two 4 pages that I'm delivering to fill a printer's flat to avoid the penalty.
Yeah.
That's how chicken shit the profits are in comics.
Right.
To save that kind of money. Okay. So all that chicken shit starts up here and ends down there.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. It's a fair point. So look, we only have like maybe 10 minutes left since Mark's got to go do it.
Because Mark's got places to be and things to do.
No, I'm sorry, guy. Oh, I already feel bad enough.
It's all good. But I want to. So I want to
love having someone else to blame. It's the best.
Yeah. I want to ask about sort of the meta of this book, on 2 different levels. On what the first level is, it's structured as though it were a comic book, a periodical comic book, a 22-page comic book. Was that the original intention? And if so, why did it become a graphic novel?
You know, I don't know. Howard, do you have an answer for this one?
Not one I want to share with you.
Okay, fair. Well,
you.
I mean, when I'm stuck for an answer, I default to the honest truth, which is, Howard, unless you wave me off, that's what I'm going to do here, man. It was originally conceived of as a 6-issue, series. And Eric Stevenson at Image said, have you guys thought about doing this as a graphic novel? I think it would work very well as a graphic novel. And we were like, you know what? That sounds great. Let's do it as a graphic novel. I normally don't like to sort of reveal that much about how the sausage gets made, but you're absolutely right, Brian. It's not like they did a very good job of hiding it.
Well, yeah, it's pretty obvious it was designed to be a mini.
Yeah. But I'm very glad that we released it as an OGN and not as a monthly series, because I think what it always wanted to be, and I can't speak for Howard, I didn't have the vision to sort of that Eric had, to be like, oh, well, just go straight to a single volume. That will really work very well for this, not just this story, but also this type of story. Yes, that's the honest truth.
So I wonder, particularly because you're at Image with this, and because it's creator owned, it makes a difference to you. You're not just getting a page rate; you only earn out if the book sells. Yeah. So, what is the difference to you of losing out on that serialization and the money from serialization, even if it's just a small amount? I am curious about this.
Yes, I mean, for sure, we left money on the table by not, first having it as a series of monthlies and then having it be collected then as a trade. I guess it sort of goes back to the very first question you asked, which is neither Howard or I are doing this for the money. Sure. No one in comics is doing it for the money. And also, I will say, if you were to, again, for me, it's like, oh, this works better as a graphic novel. It just does. And if you were to say to me, like, well, what's better, presenting this as the thing it's meant to be, or making some additional money, I'm such a bad businessman and I like to think good artist, that I will choose the former rather than the latter every day of the week, twice on Sunday.
Are you worried at any point of reaching a smaller audience? Because
yes,
typically speaking, serialization sells to a much wider audience than a more expensive OGN. Even though this is a relatively cheap book at $20.
Yeah, I feel like we've given the reader a lot of value for $20. Mm-hmm. But yes, 1,000%. And again, I refer you to my earlier statement about being a crappy businessman. I'm not good at I'm friends with a lot of very, very successful comic book writers who are phenomenal at marketing and phenomenal at selling, and they're just good at the business side of the business. And I've never been.
Self-promotion shames the fuck out of me, so I'm with Mark on this one.
I'm horrible at it. Believe me, it's a source of frustration for me, because I know how much money and readers I'm leaving on the table by just not being good at this, but it's just not a club I have in my bag. I'm just not. Yeah, I'm just
okay.
not good at
Then the follow-up question to that would be, if it were an OGN originally, natively, it would have been a different story, right? It would have been...
Actually, no. The funny thing is, had it been an OGN, it would have been the exact same story. This was always the story that we were going to tell. In fact, there was... I'm sorry, what?
I agree. I take issue. I don't think we left that much money on the table as you might think.
Well,
I think I think the story that as it's been told works just fine in this form and context.
Oh, I'm not saying it doesn't work fine. What I mean, though, is that there's clearly at every 20-page break that each part of each issue is building towards, right?
Well, yes,
and that changes the structure of 120 pages all the way through. No.
Yes and no. Well, here's the thing. It's sort of like take television, for example. When you do streaming or premium cable, you don't have act breaks. But all the good writers I know who write in streaming and premium cable write with act breaks.
Interesting.
We just don't, we remove the act, we structure the script, in 4, 5, or 6 acts, depending upon, the story and depending upon our sensibilities. But it's helpful, just like a movie, quite frankly. Every good movie has a classic 3-act structure. If you are just, know a little bit about the nature of the medium and are paying attention, you can see exactly where Act 1 ends, where the midpoint is, where Act 2 ends. I will say probably the only thing I would have done differently in terms of laying out the story is I probably would have thought twice about the flashbacks that begin certain issues. Because placing the flashbacks, those is very much a result of the monthly form. But that's really the only thing. For me, I still think in terms of act breaks. So each issue, the end of each issue, to me is an act break, and those act breaks we're going to stay there regardless. In fact, we did talk about, Howard and I did discuss very briefly, it was the shortest conversation ever because we realized it would never work. It was do we publish this like the Walking Dead trades where, you take away the issue breaks? And, we realized for a variety of different reasons that would be horrible. But it was on the table, for literally 2 seconds, I like to ask, all the dumb questions.
Credit has to be given to Thomas K. Yes. Thomas is the guy who edits my stuff. I brought him on this project because I don't like working without an editor. And I thought he did, and he basically mapped out the book for us when it became clear that it was going to be published in a single volume. And there was a lot of push and pull but we all basically came we found a compromise solution that everybody was happy with, I believe. Thomas is a guy who I've often said that every idea he has costs me time and costs me money. And yet 97% of those ideas are worth acting on. And that's a pretty good average.
Yeah, that is.
So credit is given there. He did a phenomenal job wrangling and coordinating the various elements of the material into a package that really was a viable sale tool.
Yeah. The other thing I'm curious about is the back matter, the 5 stories at the back, which are clearly not going to fit in a comic book.
No. Those were actually conceived of for, those were actually conceived of as back matter for each individual issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Believe it. The only thing that was created especially for the graphic novel was the prose story that we dug out of the archives.
Okay.
By Jeffrey Harris, where Simon Cross meets his British equivalent.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I have more questions, but we're after 7
I'm
at this
so
point.
sorry.
No, I know, it's
I'm
all good, buddy.
A horrible person.
It's all good. I'm going to keep Howard for one more question after this. But
by the way, keep Howard for many more questions because he's more, I think, as we've established in the previous hour, he's far more entertaining than I am.
Oh, please, Guggenheim,
you
you're patronizing.
You are. Well, I'm so sorry to go. Thank you very much for doing this, Howard. It's always great to see you, man. Brian, it's really nice to meet you.
Next time you come up to San Francisco, let me know. Okay, we'll.
I will. My mother-in-law lives in the Bay Area, so I will be darkening your doorstep.
You know how to get in touch with me. So
I do.
Thank you, Mark.
So much.
Hey, Mark. Thanks, man.
Right.
All right. So, and the only reason I'm going to keep you around, Howard, is because
I can really talk.
I have an actual formula here where there's 2 final questions, but there isn't going to be time for them to happen if we're keeping Mark, because it would be another 15-20 minutes probably. I don't know. So we've got 2 final questions. The first one's actually really easy. Is there anything what else you got coming up that you want to plug? Is there anything you want to plug? Plugging is always fun.
Well, I mean, I'm Hey Kids Comics is right now consuming my experience. I've just I'm in the process of working on the second half of issue 3 of volume 3. And that's about it. I mean, it's a pretty consuming project. I mean, I'm not a dilettante. I take very seriously the fact that I've got the job to do when I do the job. I'm in the process of potentially negotiating a new project, which I can't talk about. That may be the next thing up. We are very seriously trying to figure out a way to do a final Black Kiss story that we can do a huge English language omnibus collection with.
Wow!
Because there's an omnibus edition in Italy and in Spain and Germany, but not in English. And I'd like to do it. I'd like very much to do that.
Nice.
But right now, Hey Kids Volume 1, Volume 3, Number 1 is scheduled to hit the stores in May. So I'm on the train. You know, it's working. I mean, as I say, everything is written. 3 of the 6 covers are done. And the covers are of a specific time and place. The Volume 3 is about fandom and its relationship to comics.
Nice.
And it's not
nice.
Pardon me?
I said maybe not nice. I said nice, but maybe not nice.
Well, look, I mean, as I said earlier, comics is a calling, and anyone who says they came to comics as a second choice is, as we used to say in the neighborhood, full of shit. I mean, it's you're bitten by the bug and you're stuck. There's no escaping it. If you do escape, you weren't really inoculated in the first place. You know, here I am. I'm 72 years old and I'm still doing this stuff. You know, that's the deal. So that's all I can plug.
Is Hey Kids continuing past Volume 3, or is this it?
Oh, this will be it. I mean, it'll be enough. Okay. I mean, there are short pieces of business that I'd love to address, but they might be one shots down the line.
Right.
But if the first volume is about the Silver Age, the second volume is about EC and its impact on my generation, that's really true. Yeah. The third volume is about fandom and how comics is both the tail and the dog wagging each other. In that regard, because comics owes its existence in the first place to science fiction fandom. Yeah, the first editors were all science fiction guys. Yeah, and and for better or worse, comics are maintained by fandom for good and evil, so to speak. Right. So,
comics broadly, or the superhero comic universes.
Well, I mean, look, I'm a mainstream comics guy, and I'm a mainstream comics guy who tried to apply an underground comic sensibility to mainstream books unsuccessfully, because the audience for mainstream comics prefers prissiness and pinups to the potential consequences of actual lust. And I'm okay with the career I've had, but but the world I know of fandom is this, you know. My experience in comics is, I've spent my life here. This is it. I mean, as I say, 4 years old. That was my inoculation. So 68 years of awareness of this stuff. Yeah. And 53 years of doing it for a living. And I learned from masters, but I acknowledge masters. And I take experience very seriously. Yeah. So that's the story. All right.
Yeah, no, okay, it's all good. Do you? I've heard you in interviews before say that Times Squared is your kind of favorite of the projects you've worked on.
It is. It's the most personal book I've ever done.
Yeah. Is there going to be more at some point?
The book is finished. It exists.
Mm-hmm.
It's I've seen a copy of it. It's sitting in a shipping crate in China, waiting to be sent here. It's being held up by legal issues, which are completely on my side of the table. I'm not responsible for those legal issues, but I take responsibility for those legal issues because they come through the scrim of my side of the table. This is not an image issue; it is a my issue. I can't go any deeper than that. I am deeply frustrated. I am deeply enraged, and I am sustained in any whatever optimism there exists about this by Thomas, my editor, who continues to be optimistic. I'm not. But
I will be optimistic as well. Then
it's a great looking book. It's a beautiful package.
Yeah. It's just new material in this new book?
Oh, no. It's the first 2 volumes plus a brand new
story. Okay, gotcha.
A third volume plus a shitload of back matter, much of which has never been seen before.
Okay. I really hope that comes out.
You and me both, brother. Yeah. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, and then the last question, and you know, I think you know that we've been doing this for like 8-9 years now, and so we're up to something like 300 interviews, which means we have an awful lot of people who watch the show who want to make comics. And what I hear a lot is, you know, I want to make comics, but I don't know how. I don't know where to start. I figure you must have a really good answer. I mean, I know you're going to say just do them, but what would be what would be the piece of advice that you would give someone who feels that they've been bit by the bug but don't have the confidence of their own skills to actually start doing it yet?
It's a tough question. It's a really hard one to know. I mean, because as I said, when I started in the business, I had no talent, and I'm a completely learned skill set. You know, I brought nothing to the table other than hunger and blind rage. And you know, I think it's a matter of reverse engineering and analysis to find comic book scripts, see what's expected of you. Go back to what you were talking about at the beginning of this chat about, you know, doing those thumbnail layouts, figuring out what space means. There's a YouTube video of the first of 3 lectures that I do on something called the paradigm, which relates to that 5-panel page that Mark was talking about. It's free. You can find it. And it's very boilerplate. It really is. It talks about what the center of an image means, why a figure is off center, why a horizontal space works where it does, and why a vertical space works where it does. It lays out the 5 basic shots. And they are rules to be broken, but they are rules to begin with. Mm-hmm. So try that, you know. I don't recommend How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, because that's basically how to draw comics the Marvel way. Nobody does that anymore anyway. You know, when I meet someone at a convention, they want to show me their portfolio. My first question is, you really care what I think? And are your feelings going to be hurt, so you're going to be pissed off later? If they insist otherwise, I take it and I tell them what I think. And if they're any good, my next question is, whose career do you want to steal when they're dead? Because that's really what it's about.
No, it is.
All About Eve. All About Eve exists in every franchise, in every creative franchise in the world.
Yeah.
All About Eve exists in football, for fuck's sake. You know, so study. And remember, it's drawing. I have an assistant, or had an assistant, whose work was just terrible when he came to work for me. But no one had ever told him that. He always told him how good he was. And I said, you suck. You're worse than I was, and I sucked, you know? And about, I guess, as recently as a year and a half ago, there was a sea change in his work. His drawing was still not very good, but his pages all of a sudden began to develop context. There was a reason why the panels worked the way they did. They shared the page with the other panels and made sense. He was learning how to make pictures. And what happened was it pointed to how shitty his drawing was. But the pages were really solid.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they were solid enough to be criticizable, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Why did you do that? Why didn't you come a little closer? Why didn't you pull back a little bit? Things like that. Yeah. And so it can be learned. It can be learned. But there are so many little individual skill sets. Comics is a profoundly pointless and frivolous medium that is difficult to do well. Because it calls on all these little gimcrack skill sets, which are curious, related, but also separate and apart from everything else. You got to be able to lay out a page. You got to be able to do panels that have space and air. You have to be able to accommodate and anticipate the presence of lettering. You have to recognize the fact that lettering is not there just to deliver not simply a delivery system for text, but part of the graphic experience. You have to be able to draw the same character twice in different ways. Yeah. You have to do all sorts of shit, you know, and it's hard and it's pointless, which is just really cool. I mean, it is an absolutely pointless and frivolous stuff to do for a living. There's no money in it. The money is all gone. The money in the 90s was a flash based on speculators and imbeciles. Yep. You know, and you know, and
yes,
there's no money in it. It's just, I mean, like television. The money in television is flat. Okay, but if you really got to do it, do it. Go back to what you said I was going to say, and I said I wouldn't, but I did anyway. Yeah.
Thank you, Howard. That was a really beautiful answer. Actually, I really like that, and I really agree with all of it.
Thanks, man.
You know, it's why I own a comic book store, right? Because of that magic, that specialness, that I can share this medium with people. I can't draw, and I'm not a writer. Not that kind of writer, at least, but I can tell people what I like about comics and what comics I like and why I like them and what the magic part about comics is. And I swear to God, I wish we had another hour to do this because
we'll do it again.
Yeah, we'll do it again for sure. Man.
The opportunity to do this again will keep me alive.
There you go. I like that. Very good. All right. Well, I got to do a little business here.
That's responsibility. You've got that responsibility on mind.
Yeah, hang on for a second. I got to do a little business here, and then we'll come back to you. Put me on a one, then, please. So, hey, I want to thank everybody for watching the show. I want to remind you that if you would like to buy a copy of this excellent spy thriller comic, it's really, really good. You'll also get it with a signed bookplate by both Howard and Mark. You can see they're both on there. It's really pretty.
God.
It's cool. No, it's all free. Yeah. And and join the club because it's literally how we keep being able to sell comics and being able to do this. I want to thank my staff. I want to thank Zoe and KATT and Katie for running the store, which allows me to have the time to be able to sit and talk about comics and think about comics and have bigger thoughts about it rather than just running the store. So thank you all. I want to thank my producer, Jordan, for running all the backstage stuff that none of you ever see. I want to thank Ben for running the camera and running the show tonight. I want to thank all of the members of the club. If you are not a member, something will pop up on the screen in a second and you'll know how to join. You can also follow us all the time on the YouTube here. There's a button up there that you can click, a bell or something. I don't frickin' know. I want to thank all the people who make comics, especially because I could not do this if it wasn't for people like Mark and Howard. And there's Howard again. There's Howard again. Thank you so much, Howard, for making comics. I can't say that I read every one of those 53 years of comics that you've made, but I've read a fuck ton of them, and I love what you do, and I love your dedication to and enthusiasm for the medium. I salute you, my good friend, for doing this, and I'm.
By the way, yes, Brian, you have to have read everything. There will be a test. And thank you dearly. That is very kind of you to say. It really is. I expect nothing. So I'm always delighted when I get anything. It's a really good way to live.
Yeah. No, I say you're a legend. I know you don't like it when I say that, but you know,
I love that shit. But you kidding? Because I'm willing to mistake attention for affection. You know,
it can be both too, though. It can be both. We love you, Howard. Yeah,
I'm a beloved figure. You know.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you,
Brian.
man.
Next time I'm up to see my grandchildren and shit, I'll stop by the store and raise high the roof beams with you, carpenters. That'll be it.
Yeah.
All right?
We should go do lunch or something. Is what we should do.
Sounds like a plan. I can't when I'm up in San Francisco. They own my ass.
Yeah,
they own me. It's like
I understand. Yeah.
They make me eat this. They make me do that. It's just like,
I can find something they like. Whatever.
We'll work it out.
We'll work it out. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody at home. And we will. Oh no! I forgot the last thing. I got two last pieces. Sunday we're doing the Kids Club. The Kids Club. We are talking to Haley Newsome, who did the book Unfamiliar here. This is a fun little webcomic thing that is now in a comic book, graphic novel thing. The kids will love it. That's this conversation on Sunday. And next month's show, we are talking to Paul Rainey, a British cartoonist who did a book called Why Don't You Love Me? I would hold one up, but my manager took it home to read it and forgot to bring it back in so I could hold it up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, there you go. But that's next month, and we will see you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.